Hi, everybody. Well, thank you first. I want to thank Dan and Peter and the Hypothesis team for inviting me over. I hope you've had your morning coffee or tea, because I'm going to go through a big stack of information and I'm going to go quick. I might skip over some slides, but you can always come back and talk to me if you have some questions about it. All right. So why are annotations important for online education? Well, we want to break the unidirectionality of online course content. It's just one-way stream, and students or instructors don't have a way to participate directly into it. This is really the foundations of a new paradigm for online education. We haven't really been exploring this. People haven't been using annotations, digital annotations for teaching, and we're just starting to do that now. So what are the current issues with online education? Well, there's a complete disassociation of content where people can't really engage with it directly. These are clear examples, direct examples from the EdX platform, where you have juxtaposed a video and a forum, and within that forum, people are referring to the video and asking questions. I'm sure this is answered elsewhere, but where? And there's no way, if you disassociate those two, the video and the forum, that people can come back to it or in the future see what happened or what was answered about that video. So there's no contextual information right there. And what about this commentary metadata persistence? How can we keep it going? So we also need multiple forms of contextualized engagement by students and instructors. Think about how the courseware happens on platforms like the MOOC platform, like the EdX platform. We have courseware discussions, we have tutorial discussions, we have progress discussion, and we have a general discussions. All of these are disassociated. Sometimes there's reference to different pieces in there. We need something that unifies everything, where people can actually comment and bring everything together. Multiple forms of engagement. That's one of the most important things, the foundations of UDL, Universal Design Learning. If you think about it, keeping track of blended content, support personal learning environments, create study guides, being able to review topics. Flipped classroom depends on annotations, if you think about it. What is the student today in an online education? Well, they're using, they're personalizing their learning environment. If they're taking a course in the college, they're going to look for resources in other places, federated content, MOOC content, Khan Academy open content, or even other classes, and they're going to aggregate all that information to enrich their learning experience. So really, when we think about annotations, they're really the glue for blended learning and personal learning environments. Those are buzzwords for online education. Think about multiple means of expression and representation. So a student there's some students, in annotations, if it's just textual annotations, there's a bias to somebody who can really write well. But somebody who can express themselves with video or audio or imagery, there's a limitation there. So we need to incorporate media-rich annotations into systems so that we can take in everybody who has other conditions. So I'm going to talk about the EdX annotation tools that we've created over the past year, not even a year, over the past 9 months. And it's thanks to the work of, and I'm going to give a big shout out to Daniel Cebrian and Luis Duarte, who are over there, the two developers who mastermind a lot of the progress here. So we based ourselves on Annotator, the open source platform, of course, but we extended it with several plugins. Actually, we created 10 new plugins for it. We incorporated the WYSIWYG media-rich editor. We incorporated assessment tools, geolocation tools to see where the annotation was actually created. We have sharing tools, so you can actually share the fragment of that annotation to somebody else. We're working on groups. We have pre-populated tags with colored highlights, and I'll talk about that a little bit. We have flagging, so you can flag annotations if there's offensive content. And of course, all that we started actually last summer when we were building the Open Video Annotation project. So text annotations, we didn't do really much work with text annotations. Actually, we're hoping that in the future we can incorporate some of the text annotation tools that other people have done well. But we needed to get this out so that students could work with it and interoperate with our system. We did video annotations, so the video annotation tool, we actually created a complete video annotation tool, so we extended Annotator to annotate video. And we based ourselves, we used basically open technologies, so we worked with Annotator, TinyMC, Video.js, and the back end, which I'm not going to talk about it too much, but that's what Paolo is going to be talking about, which is the Catch Annotopia project. And the links are there. And that's how we build the actual Open Video Annotation project. But then from there, we took that code and put it into EdX and put it in and instantiated into there. So we integrated the Open Video Annotation tools into the EdX platform as well. And the video annotation has a little bit of analytics and display, so we can display annotations and actually share these annotations, so fragments of video. But also has basic analytics, so you can actually see what's happening on the timeline. Where is all the activity happening? So that gives you a glimpse as to where the questions are, where people are asking questions, all that. Also, what we did is we integrated the Open Sea Dragon annotation. So it's the Zoom, deep Zoom interface to create annotations on high-resolution images. And this is, Open Sea Dragon is a big project that's being used by many universities and libraries across the country and the world. And it's becoming the de facto standard for deep zoom imagery. And how do we do all this? So we aggregate all the content in a common grid, or if you want a dashboard, it's the annotation dashboard, where annotations can come from all the areas. So text annotations, video annotations, image annotations are all aggregated into one common page. So the students can go in there and review their notes, see what is happening. Maybe they've created study guides to links to their video, so playlist of their video. All that is in there, and it has a link back to the original source. And it's working with that sharing capability. And all this it happens thanks to the back end, and which now is going to be called Annotopia, and Paolo is going to be talking about this. But what this does is a common annotation back end that actually, it's an interoperable back end, so I could put it on the EdX platform and at the same time have another video project or hypothesis or any other project that could link into that database, and we would have cross-reference annotations if we wanted to. And what it does is it translates and normalizes all the annotations to the Open Annotation data model. So I'm going to give you an example of some of the results, preliminary results from the pilot test that we've run in the EdX platform. So we first started in the spring 2013. We were able to finally get Annotator into the EdX platform. It was a little bit of a work, but we finally got it in and we deployed it. There was not much activity around it, and there was a lot of issues in it. As we were developing the tools, we still were lacking some tools, and Rap Genius actually started working with one of the courses to incorporate annotations into the course. There was about 30,000 students in the Letters for Apostle poll, Letters for Apostle poll. There were about 10 texts that were annotated, and it was a 5-week course. I don't have too much data about this, but and the data that I have from my course doesn't relate too much to this one because they're not the same apples and oranges. But there were roughly about 5,000 annotations and a lot of commentaries around that. The problem with here is that students had to leave the platform and then go into the Rap Genius platform and create another authentication part. So it's a disruptive traversing from one platform to another one. We finally piloted in the early 2014 Poetry in America, from the Poetry in America course. It's the first pilot course to test the new annotation tools. And so what we had basic text annotations, but we also incorporated concept tagging and color highlighting, which if you added a specific tag to it, it would color highlight it so you could highlight the areas of that text. This is sort of the incipient semantic tagging that we're working on for the future. So the preliminary data, we have about 13,000 enrollment. The certificates, students that completed were 386, and it's about 2.8 completion rate, which is actually pretty high for EdX standards. But we created, out of these 13,000 students, there are actually over 1,000 students that were actually engaged creating annotations. Over 60,000 annotations were created over a span of 7 weeks. And this is about a rate of, if you think about that, it's about 8.3% of students engaged, and it was about 16 passages from 14 poems. The activity was just stunning. So you see that they've got several modules that got released over time, and you see that there's always a peak of activity when the modules are released, but it pretty much remains constant. We have an average of about 1,000 annotations daily and about 90 students engaged doing annotations. So you see there's a lot of activity going on there. But really what's stunning is looking at the people who have been contributing to these annotations. We've got an average of about 50 people, about 50 annotations per person. But some folks were contributing up to 700 annotations. They created 700 annotations in those 7 weeks. And it goes down. It's not like just one outlier. It's along the whole curve. It's actually a pretty nice normal curve. And the maximum, and you have a minimum of about 30 annotations. This is from the top 500 users out of the 1,000. So yes, there's some people who don't really do much. Per poem, I mean, this is data it's a lot of information, but you can see sort of the spread of the poems, and some of them had several poems that we're analyzing and comparing. But there's an average annotations per poem, about 3,700 annotations per poem. But really the interesting thing, if you break it out into parts and look at how these poems were, it's actually passages from poems. So from the same poem, we had different passages. So I'm going to digest this a little bit for you. The Song of Myself, which is one poem, which was annotated in different sections of it. In total, there's about 22,000 annotations for just one poem. That's an incredible amount of information, an incredible amount of data that we're still starting to scratch the surface of. So we have issues. Yes, this was a pilot test. There's issues on how you display thousands of annotations, how do you stimulate the engagement and the community participation, and how do you promote discovery in all of this. So what's next for HarvardX? Well, we want to improve the user experience. That's critical. We need to be able to group these annotations in a way that's digestible. We want to bring new improved UI, so thinking about the hypothesis sidebar where we can integrate and incorporate a better user experience. Think about exporting data. Students should be able to carry their information with them and in different formats so that they can have it in a PDF or a text format. They want to use it in a document that they want to produce later on. We want to start thinking about learning tool interoperability, which is the LTI, the famous LTI. Create these modules that can plug into EdX. Canvas now has LTI capabilities, but what are the future platforms that are going to be using this kind of technology? So semantic tagging for teaching and research. We are already starting to work with ontologies for digital humanities. We're starting to create poetry ontologies and Chinese poetry ontologies, classics ontologies, to create these and tag them semantically, so tag content semantically. Also thinking about assessment rubrics and inside of Annotator, so bringing in some capabilities of creating assessments directly in an annotation. Analysis and visualizations, looking at different patterns, how people have been using tags, how people have been using everything, and looking at regional perspectives. So how do people comment on one text from Africa, from Asia, so looking at those different perspectives. But really it's about the possibility of crowdsourcing and massive data, so where research drives teaching and teaching drives research. There's no boundaries there. And we want to start looking at how we discover annotations, text analysis tools that look at, it's like a Wordle on steroids, where you can seek relationships between words, and maybe connected content like RISI. But what is the big picture? The big picture is that we need a persistent annotation metadata layer, a meta layer of annotations. The ephemeral content as learning management systems will come and go, but the content will still be there. But we need also stable digital repositories to be able to point to these. And these, we would have to work with museums and libraries within the universities to be able to do this. So that's really what we want to do, is remove that ephemeral layer. And how do we work with this? We need to think about open federated annotation systems where different annotation databases can talk to each other and interoperate, and I can discover, let's say, annotations in Yale, annotations at Princeton, annotations at Hypothesis, and different things, and bring that all content. And we have a public portal if you want to look at where, what we have been doing, and some of the things that we aggregate in here, information, and that's about it. Thank you. I don't know if there's time for a question.
Yeah, any questions? With the annotation that you added with, so you can do HTML annotation, have you done anything with math?
So one of the ideas is to bring math jacks. So that's we want to because there are a lot of courses that are requiring mathematical equations. I think this is a plugin for Annotator. If somebody develops it, we'll take it up, but if not, we'll definitely, as we line up the requirements for a different faculty, we'll be developing the mathematical equation editor.
Sounds like a great idea for the hack day.
Yeah, that would be great. And I'm available for questions, and if people want to find out more about how we did all of this, the two wizards back there can give you more information about how they brute forced the code into EdX. But so you can ask Danielle or Luis.
Frederick, I just wanted to ask, have you done work with maps and geolocation stuff and that sort of thing?
So that's next on our future. We're going to start working with map annotations. Map annotations are complicated because we've got GIS layers and how we start representing those and how we to capture that state. So with web map services, we can start working with that. The Center for Geographic Analysis at Harvard is starting to develop annotation tools on top of the world map, and we're building a world map X module into the EdX annotation. So it's coming.
Okay, great. Thank you.